Happy New Year, everybody. This is Kevin for crackberry.com.
Hi, I'm Phil from Android Central.
And I'm Daniel from Windows Phone Central.
And I'm Rene from iMore, and I seem to have a strange Instagram filter on me today. I apologize for that. How is everyone else doing? Kev, how are you doing?
Phones!
What's phones? Tell me about phones.
I'm really excited about phones, our new URL shortener for all of our Mobile Nation sites. And it's pronounced phones!
Like in all caps?
Well, Phil would shoot us if we wrote it in all caps, but you should pronounce it really excited and be like, phones! Yeah, it's funny. I'm really excited about it. I mean, it's the littlest thing we should talk about today, but, you know, we've been talking about having like a URL shortener for 2 years, other than Bitly. And we've gone back and forth for having URL shorteners and what it should be and all that. You know, not seriously spending time on it, but off and on forever. And then one day we had the epiphany and we're like, phones! And then Phil sold a kidney and we bought it.
He's already sold 2 kidneys. What does he have left?
As long as he has his liver so he can drink booze next week at CES, we're good to go.
All right, speaking of which,
I don't need to pee.
Kevin, what is our CES plan? Are you going to be there?
I will be there, and we are taking, I don't even know what the total is, like 15 people probably. I think we'll have 12 or 13 on the editorial side. Then obviously we have our accessory guys out there, you know, buying for the stores. We got everybody out there. So it'll be a good crew. Content-wise, you know, it's probably the Phil Nickinson show, so we'll let Phil.
I was going to say, what the hell do you guys have to do there?
We're just, I'm going to drink and look at stuff, you know? Like, 2013 is, you know, we're getting our Mobile Nation stuff in order here. All our sites are in order, so maybe we'll launch a new site this year, you know? It's a new year. We got to be working hard. But what should that site be? So maybe by the end of CES, we'll have decided.
All right, so let me move it over to Phil. Phil, what is our game plan for CES? I think you're the only one who still has any companies that you cover going to be there.
Oh my! Well, I mean, but here's the thing about CES. It's just one of like 5,000 shows that we do every year, right? I mean, it happens to be the first, it happens to be the biggest, and it happens to be in North America, so there are a whole bunch of people there. But for our purposes, so we're expecting, you know, Sony's going to have some phones, Huawei is going to have some phones. Who else? I mean, that's kind of it. I have a feeling we'll see something out of AT&T. AT&T always does their developer conference.
Wait, stop 1 second.
What?
Huawei, that's Huawei, right? Like H-U-W. I've always wondered how to pronounce that. Huawei?
It's Huawei.
But it's spelled with an H?
Yeah.
So confused.
Well, how the hell do you spell Huawei?
I don't say Huawei, I say Huawei.
I use Chinese characters.
I've never heard it pronounced before because I care that little about what they make when it comes to phones.
Well, then there's that. It's not that they're a small company, right? They're a big company, just not here. Same thing with the ZTE. You know, there's going to be, if you've ever been to CES or even better as MWC, there's this huge contingent of the Asian manufacturers that we don't normally deal with here. And it's not that they make like horrible stuff or, you know, I mean, they make a lot of cheap stuff, sure, but it's just for a whole different market. No, so we're going to have Sony. That's probably going to be the biggest thing from a hardware perspective. There's going to be so many accessories, and I'm kind of excited to see all that cool stuff.
That lasts 5 minutes, Phil.
Was that?
The accessory stuff lasts 5 minutes.
Well, yeah. There's a rumor that we're going to see the LG Optimus G2 announced, which is kind of interesting considering the original one's like 4 months old. So I don't know about that. We'll see. We might see something tweaked, but I'm not expecting a whole new flagship phone just yet. You know, somebody started a rumor that HTC is going to announce their new M7, which is supposedly their flagship phone for 2013. I suppose it's possible, but that would require HTC to have a press conference, and they're not. So I'm kind of new at this, though, so maybe you guys know more about it.
Is that a butterfly class phone?
Yeah, actually, supposedly it is. It's supposed to be like physically big. No, I mean, so we're going to see like some decent sized things. There are going to be more TVs running Android and fridges running Android and all that stuff. But from like a phone and tablet standpoint, and we'll probably see some tablets too, right? But not like the really big stuff of the year that, you know, we're expecting the big HTC stuff at Mobile World Congress where they always do it. Samsung will probably do their own thing later. I don't really know what Motorola is doing right now, but traditionally they release stuff through the carriers, and that's usually, you know, just one-off events. So it's not that we're not going to see some good stuff in Vegas, because we absolutely are, but we need to temper our expectations a little bit.
Will Google be there?
In some form. They don't do their big giant booth at CES that they do at MWC, and in bits and pieces at Google I/O. So again, I don't mean to make it sound like there's not going to be any Android stuff, because there absolutely is. Come read the site.
Is it going to be like last year where your plane landed and 4 tablets had already been announced by the time you hit the tarmac?
Probably, yeah. No, that's generally the way it works. I'll hit the ground at noon on Sunday, and we've got stuff starting Sunday night. Actually, that's probably one of the bigger press events we have is Sunday night, and that's NVIDIA. There have been rumors that they're going to announce Tegra 4, and it's going to be this big, giant, whatever, 6 times faster. It's actually, the leaked specs we saw are pretty much right in line with what NVIDIA said they were going to be doing, a year ago. Said, all right, here's Tegra 2, here's Tegra 3, here's Tegra 3 Plus, here's what's next and what's next. And, I mean, it's kind of incremental steps, but everybody loses their stuff about it just because.
And Intel on Android?
What's that?
Intel for Android?
Intel, well, yeah, we've already got that. So maybe we'll see more out of them. I don't know. It was weird. I was expecting a lot more from Intel over the past year, and they finally brought phones out in the fall. So I mean, it's not like there's a time limit on it, right? So they can release things with Motorola or whomever whenever they want. But yeah, that's a good question. I expect more at some point, certainly.
Dan, you had a Microsoft booth, I think up until last year, and you've lost it. So
right.
What is there for you at CES this year?
I'll be hanging with Kevin, doing a lot of drinking. No, it's true. Microsoft had a really huge booth and presence at CES for the last couple of years, and this time around they won't. That doesn't mean they won't be there in some capacity. There will be a small Windows Phone gathering, I suppose I could put it. And there will be some news coming out. Huawei is expected to release one of their devices. I think it's the W1, the Ascend. And so we'll have a few devices coming out, but mostly I think mid-range to entry-level type things. Nokia will be there. We're not expecting any huge announcements from them, but they will be there in some form, possibly showing off some devices. Maybe the 510 will be there. But who knows? I agree with Phil here with AT&T. I wouldn't be surprised if the ActiveSync gets announced for AT&T. We haven't seen if that's actually coming, but traditionally Samsung has always been a big partner with AT&T, especially when it comes to Windows Phone. And now that the TVS is actually on the market, it wouldn't shock me to see AT&T go, oh, okay, here it is, it's late. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know about any other.
Bomber Note, Dan. Bomber Notes have been a key of CES for years.
Right. So Microsoft is sort of like Google and Apple, where they pulled out of CES and decided to hold their own events. We saw that last time with Build in the fall. And so Microsoft's going to continue with that. They will have, I think, a bigger presence at Mobile World Congress, where they will they'll still have their big presence there and presumably announce what's kind of known as Apollo Plus. It's going to be the first major update to Windows Phone 8. We've had a smaller one, Portico, come out, which is actually a really nice update, but they'll probably give more details on this bigger one that is set to roll out probably in the spring. And I would be surprised, for Mobile World Congress if we see Nokia announce a few more devices. But yeah, actually, I'm kind of more curious about CES this year regarding accessories. Last year for Windows Phone, it was a total goose egg. There was just nothing there. Not too surprising. This year, I'm curious if that's going to actually change. Nokia Lumia phones have really caught on. The 920 is sort of building up a smaller market now. Qi wireless charging is becoming big.
So you guys say that, but for the last 3 years, that's all I've gotten: booth after booth after booth after booth of cases, and it makes you want to beat yourself to death with your own phone.
Yeah, I never envied you or Phil for CES, only because you cover 9,000 accessories and cases, and it just gets so repetitive. And then Phil has 9,000 tablets and little junky phones that we're going to forget about in 3 months. So it's a different experience, but hopefully Microsoft and I bet we'll see a lot of Windows 8 stuff there too. Of course, it's going to be. I bet that'll probably be the bigger story. A lot of PCs, a lot of tablets, a lot of the hybrid stuff coming out, and so. We'll probably see a lot more mixture of those kind of things. But
Xbox
probably
news?
No Xbox news. That'll be definitely over this summer with the big gaming conventions and stuff like that. So, but yeah, nothing
And
for Xbox.
I tell you, if you've ever been to CES, Microsoft not having that booth is a really big deal. I mean, that's like this is what my fourth CES, and that's really what I remember is walking into Central Hall.
Yeah.
Like you walk in between. There's a connecting bridge between Central and South Halls, and that's where the press room is. And like you kind of start there, and then you go down to Central Hall, and you walk in, and it's Intel right in front of you, kind of on the right, and then Microsoft to the left, and it's just like. It totally overloads you, and it was a really cool booth because that's like one of the only places I've ever gotten to play with the Surface table. Remember that old thing? All the Windows phone or all the Windows mobile phones back in the day. More computers than I mean, it was really, really impressive site. I'm gonna miss it. It's gonna look weird.
Well, they were half that hall.
Yeah,
it was a huge presence. Yeah, because they had all their services. They had Skype last year. They had the Xbox. So that not being there. Of course, you'll see it with OEMs and their partners having their Windows 8 devices, I'm sure, on hand. But yeah, it won't be the same. And in that sense, I guess CES is becoming slightly less interesting.
What's
but
interesting
I guess,
also is, I mean, Kevin, there's not even going to be a Blackberry booth either. Last year they had cars and phones and girls and all sorts of stuff, and now they're too.
That's right.
Yeah, which for BlackBerry, it's to be expected, right? I mean, everything for them is leading up to the January 30th launch event that's happening in 6 cities simultaneously around the world.
So greedy.
What is it? Toronto, New York, London, Paris, Dubai, Johannesburg. So RIM, from a booth perspective, it really doesn't matter, CES. They've already been on their carrier road shows, and a lot of companies use events like CES and Mobile World Congress to do all their business-to-business meetings. But RIM's already been doing that the last 6 months. So for them, it's going to be a very small presence on the consumer side. There are people from RIM there. I have a bunch of meetings lined up for next week, so we will have some great CES BlackBerry content. But yeah, it's going to be a quiet show, quiet presence. But January 30th is not that long away now.
Kind of inside baseball. RIM's always been tucked back upstairs to South Hall anyway.
Is that considered tucked back?
Well, for me it is.
I've never
You've got to walk past Tom Hardy to get there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's always been. I've always felt it was a very strategic location for that. But yeah, definitely not the big booth. And I think even a few weeks back or a couple months back, we wrote a blog post saying don't expect to see BlackBerry at Mobile World Congress either. And I think it's the same thing. RIM's really not waiting for events to take control of their destiny here. They have their plan. They've been doing all the carrier meetings, and historically, Mobile World Congress, that was what RIM did, right? I remember they had their booth inside the hall, but they used to set up a totally separate building just to do all their executive meetings. And I think they've just been doing that now. So for RIM, the next 6 months are pretty much taken care of. They just need to ship some new phones.
So my question for all you guys.
No Humvee stretch limos for us?
Yeah, that was right. That was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, damn. I guess maybe not, but that would be wicked. That worked out really well.
It's all
I'll
on
make
Nokia
some calls today. I'll see what we can do.
It's all on Nokia this year, Dan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. Nokia will have a small little unofficial press booth, and they're going to have a little presence. Nokia is going to be there as always, so it'll be fun. Nokia is one of I think they're kind of like RIM. They're a good company to at these events. They always hang out with.
So I guess my question for all of you is, Apple has never been at CES. Just they were always the hot chick at the dance. They didn't feel like they had to put out for anybody. They did their own events. Now other companies are doing that too. We lost Palm a couple years ago. Google no longer had a booth. Microsoft's booth is gone. RIM's booth is gone. And I'll start this off with Phil. How relevant is CES for mobile then?
It kind of becomes a show for everybody who's not the big manufacturer. I mean, it's not that there's not a stage, right? It's not that there's not a platform for somebody to launch something. It's not like there's no press there to cover it if they do. But no, you're right. Samsung does their own thing. And the funny thing about Samsung is everybody always starts guessing when the next Galaxy S phone is coming out. And yes, there are rumors that the next one will be announced at CES. No. Very doubtful. But the thing about Samsung is they've always announced the phone at a different event. We're on the third iteration of the phone. The first one was at CTIA, second one was at Mobile World Congress, and last year's was a standalone event in London. So Samsung's going to do their own thing. I think they're going to do their own event again. like we already said, HTC does their thing. It's not that there's not a place there, but look at the release cycle time as well. And kind of the way a lot of these companies go into the design and manufacturing processes, they're starting to work on the stuff for next year right now. A lot of what they're doing for this year is not necessarily on the lines in the factories, but well into production, well into that cycle. So it's just the release schedule doesn't really work for CES anymore. Now we got tablets, I guess, and you got Polaroid, and I don't know who else putting stuff out, but don't expect anything big. Like super, super big. That's all I'm saying.
Kevin, like traditionally CES, before it became this massive media event, was so that buyers could go and look at the new television sets to stock Best Buy for.
Yeah.
But now I look at my Twitter feed, and half the people are going there with armies of 300 people to broadcast 24 hours a day, and I'm guessing interview Oprah about how much she loves the Surface. And the other half are like, I'm not even going to CES this year. There's absolutely no point. And some of those people are the biggest names in technology over the years. So why the discrepancy?
I think you just nailed it, and I was going to bring that up if you didn't. Is that if you're us and you're on the media side, we look at CES as a media event. But for most of the people going there, investing in booths,
right,
the media coverage is the that's just the side benefit of having people there and having media there. That extra coverage, for a lot of people, it is an industry show. It is B2B, and I've seen it before. We have friends who've invested there. A great example is accessories, which have been mentioned a few times this show already. You have a great idea for a new accessory. You go there, you spend your 15 grand, 30 grand, whatever on a booth. And really you're hoping that somebody comes by during the course of the week who likes your stuff and says, yeah, I want to place an order for 10,000 units. And that's why you're investing there. If the bloggers run up, that's great. And they give you coverage. That's great. But bloggers aren't placing the orders that justify the cost of the booth typically. So I think it's just two sides to the coin. And, we like to look at the big news all the time. And I think Phil's right. The cycle, the timing of CES isn't great for release cycles now because the holiday season is over. iOS comes later in the year and everybody's kind of timing their own strategic time frame to launch stuff. So I think it just depends what. I think for all this, when you say accessories, I don't just mean cases, but all these things like, Jawbone Up, or we see things like wireless charging and
car integration.
Car integration. For those companies, it's still huge. It's stuff that we're not quite as excited about. But CES will just it'll continue to change. But I think it went from being an industry show to then being a crazy media show, and now you're seeing it pull back a little bit to be a bit more industry again. But now at the same time, all the blogosphere stuff that's happening is continuing to escalate. So the people who are going are making a bigger deal out of it than ever before. And for the people who care less about that, then they're like, well, there's no point to me. It's dead to them. I think for us, I look at it as it's the beginning of a new year. And, because we're so virtually set up with people in locations all over the place, this is really the one show it makes sense for us to all go to. Just to hang out. So, if we get 5 good stories next week or 50, I personally, I'm just going to be excited to be able to have
warmer
breakfast
than
with
Canada,
you guys.
Kevin.
And it is warmer than Canada. Thank you. For reminding
colder
me
than Florida.
of where I live.
For Phil, and then I guess for Dan too. So Phil, we saw last year, it's arguable that Samsung is eclipsing Google as the major power in Android, and maybe Nokia and Microsoft too. But do you see that playing out at all, Phil? Are those manufacturer events and the direction the manufacturers are going to be the big story going forward?
I think they always have been. There's still that misconception that Android is Google and that it's Samsung against Google and Motorola against Google, and not Motorola now because Google bought them, but HTC again. That's just not the way it works. It's the way it's going to be. HTC does its event, so everybody's eyes are on it and not on the 5 million TV screens over here, some of which are running some sort of Android or whatever. I'm curious to see if something happens with this Tizen, whatever it is, the kind of offshoot that Samsung's rumored to do. But again, that's something that I think they would announce at MWC, right? Like they did Bata 2 years ago.
Yeah, is Tizen the new Bata?
Yeah. So, it is what it is. We're gonna get some kind of little stuff, maybe mid-major, but not huge.
Is it the same thing with Lumia and Microsoft, Dan?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I would say the playing field is a little bit different this time around with Microsoft sort of giving HTC a little bit more of a lift this time with the 8X. I think it's about 60 or 70% of the ads now feature HTC 8X in them for Windows Phone. And so, but the Lumia 920, of course, is the one that's still getting all the headlines. I think the big question is whether or not the 920 will go to other carriers. AT&T has a 6-month exclusive with the 920. Potentially other carriers could announce something here, but I doubt it almost just because, it hasn't been 6 months yet. It would still be another couple before that would happen. So, yeah, I'm not really too sure. I'm curious about Samsung. They're the one. They have a device coming for Verizon. It's a low-end, entry-level device. It's supposed to go for free on contract, I believe. We don't know too much about it. It's rumored to be, it could be the Active S for Verizon, but we're not really too sure. That was actually supposed to come out in December, and it hasn't happened yet. So I would really expect Samsung, in their traditional way, they're going to probably have a big Android thing, and then on the side they'll be like, oh, and here's a few Windows phones that we're releasing too. And by the way, Android. So I'd be curious to see that. The TVS, which I actually have right here, is a pretty solid phone. But I'd be curious to see if this gets any U.S. carrier support, because right now it doesn't have any U.S. carrier support. And it's sort of, I would say, a big hole for them, because this is the only 4.8-inch device that we have right now for Windows Phone 8, and it's pretty massive, but also extremely thin. I mean, it's a GS3, right, with Windows Phone 8 on it. That's basically what it is. It's a nice device, though. So I'm kind of more curious about if Samsung's going to do anything at CES this year in that regard.
Well, I have you guys here and can make you fight, and I'm going to ask Kevin first just to set up the fight. In times past, Kevin, we saw companies like Google and others complain that Microsoft wasn't as open as they could be and wasn't sharing their protocols and was proprietizing the web. And now this year, we've seen Google walk away from ActiveSync. You are the biggest BlackBerry addict on the planet. You're also a major Gmail user. I love iOS. I'm a major Gmail user. We face a future where the next time we get a new device, we might not be able to get Gmail over ActiveSync. Is that a big deal, or is that just a reflection of the changing roles of those two companies?
Yeah, Google. I remember years ago reading Google's terms and conditions, and I thought it was the greatest company of the world because it said, "We do, our goal is to do no evil. We're so good." And I'm like, yeah. You look at Google now; they're just another company. They have a lot of good people working for them, just like a lot of companies do, but they're still a company at the end of the day. I think on the BlackBerry side of things, they've been prepped for this change from Google for some time. So I think they've figured out their workarounds. And on BlackBerry 7 and older devices, remember that they were using a proprietary system anyways, which is why it never quite worked that great for syncing calendar events and that. But it worked. And I think with BB10, they're already prepped using the card DAV stuff, whatever it is. I always forget how to say that word.
Card DAV, CalDAV.
CardDAV, CalDAV. So that support's been on the playbook for a long time, right? It's already baked in. So I think they're going to make sure that experience is as good as possible. And that's it. Hopefully it works to everybody's expectations. I think RIM knows the importance of making that experience great, though.
Dan, is it ironic, though, that Microsoft is now complaining that Google's not giving them API access to YouTube and they're shutting off their ActiveSync support? I mean, Microsoft of all people.
Well, I mean, the Microsoft complaint about YouTube goes back to 2011. That's actually not new. They're just bringing it back up again because it still hasn't been addressed. The complaint there is that Google is not allowing Microsoft access to the metadata, allowing them to create an actual decent app. And evidently they do have the app, but they can't release it because it violates Google's terms of service. And so
Google won't make apps, right? That's the other side of that coin.
Right. And then they're really screwing us two ways, which is one, they won't allow us to have access, which they've evidently allowed Apple to do and created apps and stuff like that. And then the other one is not only they're not allowing access, but they're and we're not going to make any apps for you either. So you can't have it, period. And then now Microsoft's alleging that Google's actually said internally that they don't want a premium YouTube experience on Windows Phone. So we have MetroTube, which is a great app it's probably the best app for viewing YouTube on Windows Phone. It goes for 99 cents. It used to be free. But that's a third-party app. It technically violates Google's terms of service all these high-quality YouTube apps on Windows Phone basically bypass Google's system, which is why every time Google alters their API, it temporarily breaks the app. So Google's being, I would say, quite vicious here. it's a weird thing. YouTube has become so universal that when you deny access to a company to allow them to use it, it's kind of a big deal. Yeah, I know Microsoft has their Bing Video and all that kind of thing, but honestly, I mean, that's not, you can't compare that to YouTube. So
but
it's
Microsoft
a weird,
under Bill Gates might have implemented the strategy himself.
possibly, yeah. I mean, there's two different companies now. It's funny, like Microsoft has gotten a lot more open now. They don't demand you use their services, and Google's sort of gone the opposite direction. So they're almost like swapped places here. Now Microsoft's sort of the underdog. And it's just, it's unfortunate because the only people that are really getting screwed here are consumers, right, who are losing out on a certain experience. And it's weird because Microsoft is all like, here's our services, we'll make apps for you. And Google's like, oh, that's great, we'll take that, but, we're not doing anything for you. And it has nothing to do with market share either or any of this kind of stuff. It's just strict. They're just kind of being jerks to each other, and it's kind of a shame. Same with the email thing. If they want to abandon ActiveSync, it's fine. That's their prerogative. But the fact that they're doing it so suddenly, they made this announcement, and it's like they basically gave 60 days notice, not even. That's obviously they didn't have to end it January 30th. They could have obviously made it to March 30th. They could have done all sorts of things, but they're obviously being pretty aggressive here, and they're obviously worried. Google's bread and butter is the web, and they have to protect their kingdom from Microsoft. Microsoft's making, I would say, a good effort in competitiveness. Bing was laughed off a couple years ago. Some people still kind of laugh at it, but Bing's actually a decent service. When you go to that site, it's like Microsoft can do some things right.
I've heard of it.
So you should try it. It's good. I don't know. I use Bing now 24/7. I don't use Google search anymore. So.
That was one of Phil Nickinson's best pictures ever on a
Oh, yeah, the Bing. Yeah, sure. So
I just want to find a giant android robot to knee in the family jewels.
Right.
Again. Phil, how do you read this? I mean, is this just the way that business is done? Is this a change for Google? Is this just a bunch of whiny people who think they deserve everything all the time, wherever they want it?
I mean, I think Microsoft's being dicks about stuff. Google's being dicks back. That's welcome to the world. I personally think that every platform should just be a dick and release like every service on every other platform, But obviously they see things different. But I mean, there's a practical side there too, right? You've only got so many engineers available to port stuff over to Windows Phone, just as you have so many to work things up for iOS. So you've got to prioritize there too. And I would have to assume that plays into some of it, right?
Maybe. I mean, Microsoft has made their own high-quality YouTube app for Windows Phone. They just need permission to release it, basically. So this is just a matter of, this is like almost like paperwork.
If Microsoft made a high-quality iTunes app, Apple wouldn't let them release it either.
Right.
They had to Palm for a while.
Use Bing Video. What's wrong with that?
Nobody else is, Phil.
Hey, we have Bing Video built in, and it actually works very well. But obviously, it's not the same name brand experience. So. I don't know. It's just a shame that they're kind of behaving like this, I suppose.
I agree.
Because you would think any company would be like, here's our awesome service. Let's allow everyone access to it. It's usually how it works. It's like you have a service, and you're like, I want to put it on every platform so everybody can take advantage of it. But when you're purposely not allowing it on one specific platform, basically out of spite, it's just like looks kind of bad.
Could ODMs, could Samsung license YouTube or license ActiveSync independent of Microsoft for Windows devices? Or could Nokia?
I would imagine. I don't know. I mean, Nokia, I'm sure would be trying to do this too, but it seems to be a blanket thing. I don't know. HTC did have their own YouTube app for a long time. I don't think it's available anymore for Windows Phone. So they used to do these kind of things, but it seems to be across the board now. So.
All right, so I want to transition past CES.
Wait,
sorry.
I want to say I have my Nexus 4 here and my Lumia 920 here, and I like the Lumia 920 better. So Google should be nice to Microsoft, so there's more stuff I can use on it.
Nice.
I have
for like 3 weeks until I go back to BlackBerry 10. But.
Nexus and iPhone.
Right.
See, Phil, we used to joke that everyone had an iPhone in mobile nations, and now everyone's starting to have an Android phone as well.
I've never had an iPhone. I've never had an iPhone.
That's why we barely hired you, Dan.
I'm like fully prepped for BlackBerry 10 reviews because I have all my head-to-head shootout devices. I got the iPhone 5, the Nexus 4, the Lumia 920, the old Blackberries, the new Blackberries.
Don't buy an Android phone for your shootout because Phil will have a 4K screen device days before you do the videos.
Right.
That's true.
So yeah, so let me transition to 2013. Beyond CES, Kevin, your big day is January. So your big month actually is January. But where do you see RIM going after the launch? Where are they going to battle Microsoft for third place? Are they going to go straight to the top? Is it going to be a segmented marketplace now where BlackBerry is in certain verticals but not others? How is it going to play out?
Stop for a second. So BlackBerry still is in third place, and it's up to Microsoft to battle BlackBerry, which they've had the last 2 years to do because RIM's done nothing, and Microsoft has failed miserably with Windows Phone 7. And
you have a new curve on
and,
T-Mobile today. I saw it.
and 8. So
Yeah,
so
what
it's
the
up
hell
to
is all that
Microsoft.
about?
That's just RIM putting low-end devices. Actually, you know what my theory is? Different markets have regional managers that probably have to hit like different sales quotas, and I'm guessing the U.S. manager there probably had to push through something to meet a quota so he keeps his job. No, I don't know how it works, but
No,
I don't know. It's
guarantee
weird. It's a
T-Mobile's got those
distraction that
cheap.
should really get no attention because it's all eyes focused on BlackBerry 10. It's the same thing. Like last week, they announced that they're going to release the BlackBerry P9981, the $2,000 Porsche phone, in an all blacked out model, which looks cool, but nobody really cares.
Did you
because it's
pre-order?
on BlackBerry 7? No, I'm just trying. They owe me a free one because I had my one Porsche phone and one quit working on me, and I sent it back to RIM. And I'm like, I want the black one. So hopefully I just get it replaced.
All right, so 2013, Windows. You were insulting Windows Phone and about something mean about Android.
No, I think it's up to. I honestly think Microsoft has had a shot and they haven't been doing much with it. And I think RIM knows that they only have one shot right now, and that's how they're treating this. They're treating this like this is the launch that either keeps us in the game, brings us back our mojo, or it's lights out. And RIM is going to leave nothing on the table in getting this right. I mean, even look at the launch event. They're not doing one launch event. They're doing 6. Look at the leaks today. We saw a Verizon BlackBerry Z10 phone with Verizon branding on it. Everything's lining up, right? And they just got to get those phones shipped. And I think the BlackBerry brand, people recognize what it's for and who it's for better than they do than the average person does Windows Phone 8. I think RIM has 80 million customers to try to get upgraded as fast as possible, at least a decent segment of it. And RIM's upgrade segment is going to put more BB10 phones into people's hands than there are Windows Phone 8 devices in the market, without even chipping into Android's market share or anybody else's or new market share. So I think RIM will just be, from our perspective, it's been like they haven't been doing so hot. But they've still been selling devices. They've still been keeping it up, and there's going to be people who buy it. So I think BlackBerry mindshare very quickly will come up pretty strong. And I think the thing about BB10 is that they've built in a few really strong marketing messages into the OS experience that people will latch onto, which is what it's all about, right? Like you're going to see RIM say, we have the best keyboards, whether physical keyboard or touchscreen keyboard. And you already know that they have the best physical keyboards. They're the only ones really making physical keyboards anymore because everybody conceded that to RIM. And their new BB10 touchscreen keyboard, it looks different, right? The swipe gestures and that, it doesn't actually matter if it's the best because I come back to it being, a great typer is a great typer on any keyboard. I can type fast on iPhone, the BB10 phone, the Windows Phone 8 phones, SwiftKey 3 or whatever it's called now on Android.
Lightning fingers. We call you lightning fingers.
Yeah, fast on all of them. Honestly, to me, the BB10 keyboard is good. I think if you're a really horrible typer, it can make you faster. If you're a really fast typer, it's a good keyboard. It's not making a fast typer any faster. So that's a strong marketing message that the average person is going to get. And if that resonates with people clearly, they'll go pick one up.
Is it too different though, Kat? I mean, if you had a BlackBerry Curve or 9900 and you pick up BB10 and it's all gestures and your buttons aren't there anymore, how is it enough to be a different phone, or is it still going to be BlackBerry to them?
So it's very different than BlackBerry. I think they've done a lot to keep the look of BlackBerry, which I almost wish they changed it more. I mean, if you look at some of the icons and menus and things like, even like the white options menu that's kind of ugly on BlackBerries to date, it from what we've seen so far at BB10, they're kind of keeping it, a little prettier icons once you're in it, but it's still a very menu-y menu once you get into options. So there's little things I think they've kept very consistent to the old experience, almost too much so. And moving forward, it's hard to say. I think the average BlackBerry user will pick it up and be able to, who's never touched a playbook before or used BB10, will be able to pick it up and be comfortable with it very quick.
So like really Joe Wall Street or Jane BBMer.
Yeah, it's really simplified. I mean, if you think about how confusing some of the existing BlackBerry menus and settings and all that are, I think now it's a much simpler process. And all of the things that we've complained about BlackBerry over the years, the the battery pulls,
The Java.
the Java, the hourglassing, the need to pull your battery every week, how to do OS updates, all that stuff is completely gone, right? Like any of the historical problems 100% solved. There's not one line of code that carries over from BB7 to BB10. It's a completely new operating system. So I think they fixed all the problems that old BlackBerry users will pick it up and be like, whoa, this is so much better, because there's really no comparison to the old phones in terms of stability and that annoying factor that we had before. I think they're trying to keep as much of the good stuff in there. There is a blinking red light. The hub, which is your unified inbox on steroids, is really compelling. I think that's another strong message RIM will have when they market BB10. And a lot of these messages are focused around communication, which has been arguably a point where RIM hasn't been weak. But I think they'll be able to now say to people, hey, yes, we have apps. Yes, we have a great web browser. Yes, we have a great mobile experience, multimedia experience. Yes, you can buy music and movies and apps from our app store. Because a lot of messaging for BlackBerry has been so screwed up that people still don't think you can get apps for them. There's just a lot of
super apps.
Yeah, I know, but now it's a time for them to they're going to be able to come out, everybody's going to listen, and they'll be able to deliver a message of what they have to say.
And no one needs to panic and buy 10 BlackBerry 9900s and put them in the freezer because they're afraid they're never going to see that phone again.
No, they're going to keep supporting that as long as their orders. I was at RIM not too long ago. I interviewed their chief operating officer. And, RIM in the past was a little bit cluster screwed because they had, I just want to swear today.
You can swear. You're allowed.
No, I'm going to keep it clean. 2013 resolution, swear less. Got to stick with it. Before they had multiple COOs, and it was a bit of a mess because you had a different guy in charge of selling to carriers and the number of orders coming through versus the guy who was manufacturing the volume, and they weren't quite as efficient as they could be. Right, the just-in-time manufacturing wasn't as just-in-time as it should be. And I think now with one COO who controls both the input and the output side, that's what's going to dictate the decline of BlackBerry 7. As soon as carriers say, we don't want your BlackBerry 7 phones anymore, RIM will quit making BlackBerry 7 phones. As long as there's carriers saying, yeah, send us 50,000, send us 20,000, they're going to keep making it. It's pure business from that perspective. And there are still compelling things about BlackBerry 7 out there, especially in some of the emerging markets and all that kind of stuff. Same for enterprise, where you already have the old BES set up. People like it. They're not in a rush with their buying cycle to change out of that. So it'll all be, it's business. They'll take care of it.
What's interesting to me is that Phil has almost the opposite problem. I mean, almost every feature anyone complains about not being on their operating system, he has in the latest version of Android. Almost every spec you could put in a phone. I was joking before, but only slightly, about him having a 4K phone. Where does Android go next year, Phil? Do they have to invent new stuff now?
I think they're going to keep cleaning stuff up. A lot of the services are still kind of spread all over the place. If you look at, especially in communication, Google Talk is weird, right? So it's tied into your Google account, and you also use it across Google Plus, which obviously is Google's big thing. But there are different apps, and then there's regular SMS text messaging app, but then there's Google Voice. So if you use Google Voice, that's a whole separate thing as well. I don't know if I want a unified messaging thing kind of like WebOS had, but I think they're going to have to fold some things into each other. It's a lot to take care of one way or the other, but it would do a lot to Google to kind of consolidate some of those services. The living room is still, that's the number one thing I think everybody's working on, not just Google. We saw that Nexus Q ball thing that, I still am madly in love with the idea, and I think that's the right way to do it. And I think Apple's done it the right way with AirPlay as well. So I think we're going to see more of that. I think they're going to, add some actual functionality and get the price down and all that stuff. So it's exciting times for me along that front, because I've been watching a whole lot of movies and music, using my phone to control stuff and controlling it from the other room when the kids are watching things. So I think we're going to see more of that. The hardware has plateaued. We've been talking about that for a while. If we see some sort of big jump in technology anywhere, it's going to be hopefully battery life, right?
Yeah.
But software is really good. I think they need to work with the manufacturers better, and they can always do that, right? But I think they're going to have to be able to streamline the process, and I think Android's actually getting better. Google's getting better in helping the OEMs get devices out and get them updated. You're seeing a 5 to 6 month window now between major updates.
Do the people still running Gingerbread just have to die out like the dinosaurs did? And then
yeah,
Google can
kind
move
of.
forward?
I mean, not every phone is going to get updated. That's just the way it is, right? And we've said this ad nauseum. It doesn't mean you have a bad phone. It means you have that phone that's kind of it's a time capsule to that time. Android
like the TV
phones
you bought.
yeah, a little bit, yeah. Android phones are not set up to be updated the same way that the iPhone is. It is not designed to do that from the ground up, to be on, to have these overlaps where you have iPhone 1, iPhone 2, iPhone 3, iPhone, and I'm, oversimplifying this, but you're not going to have the overlap and the updates that, I'm doing like little bunny foo-foo here. They're just not designed to do that. There's no central Android, and that's the big misunderstanding everybody has when they write those posts is, well, the latest version of Android isn't on this and this and this and this. Well, there's not one version of Android, and I don't get why that's so hard to understand. There is the version of Android that Samsung's using because it's Samsung's version, and then it's not like you can just take it and slap it on 6 phones at once.
You said that before, right? It's a platform for platforms.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. It is the new embedded OS, so there's that too. If I could do anything in 2013, it would be to help explain that better to people and get away from this misconception that if your phone doesn't have the latest version of Jelly Bean, or if your phone doesn't have Jelly Bean at all, that it's a bad phone, that it's worthless. I was getting a haircut today, and the girl cutting my hair says, "Yeah, I've got some Commander, so it's big and rugged," and I knew exactly what it was. It's this Casio Jizz One, whatever the hell it was, Commando, I think it was, and it does what she needs it to, and it still does more than she needs it to, and I think that is something we as tech bloggers need to remember, right? It's when you're activating 1.3 million phones a day, they're not all nerds.
Well, remember how many Windows XP machines were out there for forever and still are out there.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about the trend for people to run other stuff on their Android devices? We've seen Open WebOS get booted up on devices. There's going to be Ubuntu on Android. I think Mozilla was also on Android last year. Is that a good thing?
It's fun, but it's niche. And I'm glad people are doing it. I love seeing just hacking nerd developers do this stuff, right? It's not unimportant. But at the same time, let's not pretend that it's anywhere near the numbers that a normal consumer is. Same thing. Open WebOS, very cool to see, but it's not going to take market share away from anybody. Ubuntu for Android, I think Jerry, said it really well yesterday, that we've been hearing a lot of cool stuff from Canonical for a long time, and people hear Ubuntu and they hear Linux and like, sweet, this is going to be awesome because it's really good stuff. And I'm excited about it too. I can't wait to try it. I'm finally going to get to see it Monday, I guess. But again, you're activating 1.3 million consumer devices a day, and the vast majority of those are outside the United States. When you go back and look at, I think Rene and I talked about this for the last earnings calls. Verizon did something like, I forget what it was, but say it was 2 million devices in that quarter, 2 million Android phones in that quarter in 3 months. So the numbers just don't add up at all. So it's good to keep those things in perspective. It's no less cool, but it's not going to be a game changer. Not yet.
I disagree a little bit here with the the perception problem that Android has with the upgrades and all that. I mean, that perception problem is created in itself by Google. You can't both have a press conference going Android 4.2 on the new Nexus device, and here's all its cool features, and here's what we're doing with it, and then have people see these this press conference, and it's sort of like very Apple-ish, where they announce everything and show off the hardware. And then people look at their Android phone going, I want that. I have Android. Why can I? I mean, they're creating that perception problem. They want it both ways, where they want to update the OS, have a big press conference, show off these new features, show how they're either innovating or, copying everybody else. and then also have OEMs doing their own thing. It does create a perception problem, but they're the ones doing it, and you're not going to change that unless they, forbid OEMs from customizing, which probably won't happen.
No,
or they,
that would
or they got to do it one or both ways. But
You cancel Google I/O.
Yeah.
you'll never convince people that when they buy an Android phone and then Google comes out and goes, here's the new version, the OS, you're never going to get people to go, oh, I understand, though. That's a different phone. That's a different operating system than what I have, even though it's called Android. You're never
agree
going
with
to.
you, but I agree with you, but I think we also have to remember who it is saying this. There's my dad saying, well, okay, I need a new phone. What's the one, what has the latest operating system? Because he recognizes that there are older ones out there. But at the same time, it's not the soccer moms who are, oh my God, I have to have Jelly Bean. Why don't I have it? It's nerds.
Right.
It's us.
No, that's true.
And again, that's not saying I don't want every phone to be updated, but it's just not going to happen. But I agree with you. I think part of that is Apple has set an unrealistic expectation for how to upgrade an entire line. I think Microsoft. So you've got Apple up here. I think you've got. Throwing my Windows Phone. I think you've got Microsoft somewhere in the middle because Microsoft still has to deal with carriers a little more. I'm still waiting on whatever that latest 8X update is for my AT&T one, by the way. Where's that?
Pikachu, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Fragmentation.
Yeah.
Fragmentation.
No, I mean, yeah, it's true. I mean, but yeah, Windows Phone is definitely positioned in the middle.
Yeah.
Well, you also have the problem, Dan. Like people who had Windows Phone, was it 7.5, 6.5, whatever, they couldn't go to 7, and people who had Windows Phone 7 couldn't go to 8. Does Microsoft have to earn that confidence back now with their future updates?
Yes and no. Once again, this goes into the jelly bean, who knows about it kind of thing. You can make a good argument that Windows Phone 7's market share was so little that the audience, that you've offended by not giving them the upgrade is almost inconsequential to the larger message. People who see a Windows Phone 8 device aren't going to go, wait a second, you mean people who bought a device 2 years ago weren't able to upgrade to this phone that I just bought?
Or 2 weeks ago, to be fair. I mean, an 820.
Yeah, well, that message is almost like, had Windows Phone 7 gotten so huge that, you had like 20% market share, it would have been, I think, a more serious problem. But in a way, Microsoft benefited from not being able to take off. Now, with Windows 8, it is a clean break from the Windows Phone 7 kind of thing, but they're not going to have to do that again anytime soon because Windows Phone 8 is based off the NT kernel. It's it's going to be good for at least another, I don't know, at least a decade, maybe less. Depends on how much innovation happens. But everybody knows Windows Phone 8 in theory can run 64 cores. It's scalable up to, almost infinite resolution. It's up to Microsoft to actually make that happen in the OS, but it's perfectly doable. So there's nothing that you can throw at it for hardware that it can't conceivably do. So that will never have to happen again. So it was a shame, but Windows Phone 8 and so in the room said, well, Microsoft needs to update more often, which I would agree with, except I would say the Lumia 920 was out for about 30 days and it got an OS and firmware update. And so I don't know, that's pretty fast in my book. It's an OS update that actually brought some really cool features. And the firmware fixed some issues with the camera, and now we're seeing that with the 8X. The 8X is getting it, up in Canada, they've gotten it. Some international users have gotten it, and it's rolling out. And you'll see it go wider in 2013. So Microsoft is, and I would actually say that over-the-air update has actually been very successful. We haven't had any complaints directed towards us with people having failure with that update, and so I would say this was an initial rollout to almost test the waters. They're getting feedback to see how well it's going.
Do you have any idea if there'll be an 8.5 or are they going to go to like a once-a-year update the way Google and Apple have been going?
Yeah, that's supposedly what they're going to be doing. That they'll be doing whole version updates every year. With you'll see like Portico, which is out now, it's a small update. It's not a version revision, but it adds some new features. But you'll see these version revisions throughout the year, and then presumably, every year they'll do a full refresh of the OS, and that should be, current devices should be able to get those. They're good for, Microsoft said something about 18 months of OS updates for current devices. So if you buy a device now for 18 months, whatever is coming out there, your device presumably will get that. Now, it's true OEMs still play a role in this. Carriers still play a role in this too. It's becoming a little bit less of a major factor. but you know, it's better than Android, not as good as Apple.
And what do you want to see, Dan? Like, if there is a Windows Phone 8.5 or 9, are there things that Microsoft urgently still has to address, like notifications or?
Well, the notification center, they kind of have addressed in the sense that they said, we are going to have a notification center. We wanted to do that, but we just ran out of time basically to get Windows Phone 8 out. And anybody who followed the Windows Phone 8 coming out realized they were really pushing deadlines there. And so it's true, they had to prioritize certain things. So I would definitely say Notification Center is on the books, will be coming out. I wouldn't be shocked to see if it comes with the Apollo Plus update. You're also going to see some more enterprise support, VNC and that kind of thing. And
CarDev, CalDev.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be around the quarter too. They need to refine their services a bit. They did not only update the phone OS, but their media services, video and music, were updated too. And there's some inconsistencies there. And I think all this will be, upgraded throughout the year and greatly improve the experience. I will say the Windows Phone 8 experience has absolutely been generally fantastic, though. It's not perfect, but overall, it's a significant OS, and it has a lot more potential. Now, regarding what Kevin was talking about with BlackBerry, I think
so
BlackBerry
happy Windows. Wait, I want to say nice things though. Windows Phone 8's a really happy operating system, and I really enjoy using it. And I showed it to a lot of people over the holidays, and I said actually good things about it. But everybody was surprised when I said good things about it. Like, they expected me not to. It's kind of weird.
Well, because to show you how compelling it is. I will say, I think Windows Phone has sort of, it's finally breaching public perception now. Even my older cousin, who I don't chat with, and I don't praise Windows Phone around my family and stuff like that. It's just, but she just randomly got the Lumia 822 on Verizon, and it's weird. It's finally now just like perfect strangers are sort of buying these phones now and are aware of it.
There's a guy with the same name of you writing about my phone.
Right. No, it's a different, more extended family, we'll say. But I think it's finally broken public perception. And regarding BlackBerry, I think BlackBerry does have that name recognition thing, and that will help a lot. But what's going to, I think, be BlackBerry's and RIM's failure is sort of what Palm's failure was, which is they're just going to run out of capital in Steam. It's not that their OS or the platform wasn't good. It's just they're not going to be able to compete with like
they have Kevin buying $2,000 phones. They're fine.
Yeah, no,
right.
RIM's not a Palm story at all. I mean, it's possible if sales stop dead, sure. Right. But I mean, they should have. If that was the case, they should have died 9 months ago. And they managed to pull through and actually build their cash war chest.
But it is true, Kevin, that they don't have secondary businesses the way that Apple and Google and Microsoft do to support their phones.
Right.
No,
and that's
I mean, they got some stuff, but it's not big money, right? I mean, they have things like QNX, and they have businesses. They just sold off one of the businesses they acquired. So they're definitely dropping anything that's not core to BlackBerry. And
I'm not saying they're exactly like Palm. I'm just saying that Microsoft can throw and is prepared to lose money on mobile for a long time, and they can afford to do that. And they can even prop up companies like Nokia a little bit by, actually giving them money to do it. And anyone who saw, over the holiday season, advertising for both Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 was pretty massive. I was at the gym, and we have the 10 TVs lined up, and it was like every commercial break I was seeing like a Microsoft commercial for Windows Phone 8 or Windows 8.
In Canada, they're calling them Windows 8 phones, or not even Windows. They were just saying Windows 8 and showing phones. They didn't even
and you probably spell them with a U too.
We do. Windows
and umlaut.
And Dan, that's been one of my big questions of the year was by the end of the year, who's going to spend more money? Samsung on the Galaxy S3 and the Galaxy Note, or Microsoft on Windows 8? And I got a feeling it's going to be Microsoft. I think it's tough to appreciate for a lot of people, especially who don't live and breathe this stuff, how big a deal Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 is. And I really started to understand a lot more of it when I finally started using Windows 8. And I'm using it in the desktop sense and not on a proper touch interface. But it makes sense how it's moving to Metro and
it's a transition OS. I mean, Windows 8, as much as I like it, it's
the
still
iTunes 11 of OSs.
It has some incongruities to it, but those incongruities are there almost on purpose to sort of. They got rid of desktop, which I can't wait till they get rid of desktop. To be honest, I don't like the two styles. I like using RT, the Metro interface. But they couldn't
when
do
Metro
it.
takes over, it's going to be really, really cool.
Right. But they couldn't get rid of desktop because legacy people still need that familiarity. And so, but once they do and they transition away from it, it's going to feel really powerful. And yeah, Windows 8 it's an impressive OS. It's not perfect, but it's it's interesting, and you can see, like what you're saying, you can see where they're going with it, which is, I think, the important thing. Anyone who uses it gets sort of what they're going for in the long term. So.
That's actually interesting because I think that a lot of that applies to where Apple is right now as well. They had what for them is a massive corporate restructuring. Scott Forstall, who created iOS, won the argument to say that BSD Unix should be the foundation of their mobile operating system, who convinced Apple most likely that they should have an app store instead of having a completely closed device. Someone who won major battles and through force of will created one of the most popular operating systems on the planet was dumped by Apple, and his duties were split up, and Apple now has a very neat, tidy organization with one person in charge of services, one person in charge of software, one person in charge of design, and that's going to make an incredible difference, I think, going forward, because almost like now that Disney owns Star Wars, you don't get the original movie, but you don't get the prequels. It's almost like everything has been normalized. And will iPhone be as exciting? Will it be less frustrating? It's going to be interesting to see because people are getting bored of just the launcher interface that you've had since the Palm, you've had for a long time. Right. But at the same time, I've been using the Nexus 4 for the last week and a half, and I have no use for widgets. Anything that I have to go and find information on, to me, is last generation. I think we're going to take a step now in interface with things like Google Now, where it's predicting what you want and giving you the information, actionable notifications, which WebOS had for a long time. I think this year, and I hope Apple is in the lead on this, that the information is going to start coming to us. I'm going to get a pop-up, and I can answer an SMS in the pop-up. I can answer in the notification. I can change my alarm in the notification. I can, instead of going to ask Siri for stuff, Siri will tell me, Rene, the traffic has changed. You better get your ass out of bed now and get to that meeting because you're not going to make it if you just go by what's in your calendar. And I think the interfaces with stuff like Connect and stuff like Leap and stuff like Siri and stuff like Google Now are going to change the way that we all use these devices. And again, I think Apple in 2007 was the newest mobile operating system on the planet. And as soon as Blackberry 10 launches, it is going to be the oldest mobile operating system that's currently alive and mobile, at least one that's still mainstream and still popularly being used. And they're bringing these legacy user bases. Like Dan said, how easy it was to switch to Windows Phone 8 because almost no one used Windows Phone 7. Apple now has a Microsoft problem with hundreds of millions of people who are used to, like my mom, pressing home button, pressing an app, pressing home button, pressing an app, and they can't confuse her, but they still have to move their platform forward.
Sure, right. That's always a big problem. Yeah,
we've also seen for the first time 2 iPads released in the same year. Apple never did that before. Actually, 3 if you count the iPad mini. We could be going into a year where we have more than one iPhone, maybe more than one iPhone size. People said Apple would never change the iPhone screen. Last year we got 4 inches. Could we get 4 inches and 4.5 this year? They went with an iPad mini. There's 2 iPad sizes now. Why not 2 iPhone sizes? And I think that's what Apple needs. I think they needed to shake loose that repetitive cycle that they were in, and now they're a little bit unpredictable. I don't want to say they're like the crazy Ivan of tech now, where they're spinning around and scaring everybody every few seconds. You look up and Tim Cook is staring at you. But I think it's going to be an interesting year for Apple as well. And
Rene, you know what I was curious about was how come, and this kind of really blows my way. Like I'm running, I don't know if I can. It's all connected up here, but I'm running the Acer Aspire S7, which is basically a MacBook clone.
Yeah, it's a MacBook Air.
But it's actually better than a MacBook Air because I have the MacBook Air too. But what kills me about this is it's a 1080p screen that's also touch. So it's a full touch screen. It completely folds down. It's not as quiet like the Lenovo Yoga, but it can go completely flat and you can almost use it like a tablet. What kills me about this is that Microsoft did it and not Apple. With iOS and with their MacBook Air and their penchant for innovation, I'm really shocked that Apple didn't do the touchscreen laptop first. And I'm curious,
that's a lie. See, Apple's that's a myth. Apple's never innovate. I mean, well, they do, but not the same way. They're almost never first. They're in very, like, they didn't have a 3G phone for a long time. Didn't have GPS in their phone for a long time. Okay. They're usually very slow. They let other companies experiment. They're happy for Samsung to release a phone at every quarter-inch increment and then see which ones are the most popular.
I really wish Samsung would quit doing that, by the way.
And then they put together technologies into one mainstream package. And I don't think we'll see a touchscreen Mac. I think they'll go to something like Connect or Leap instead, where you can just gesture in front of it and use your voice like Siri to control it. I think I think we're going to see a lot of companies skipping things and trying to go to what's next, like watches or Kevin, wearable stuff. Is that next? Google Glass?
I bought a Nike Fuel Band for myself for Christmas,
And
and I wore it for 3 days, and now I haven't worn it the last 3 days. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot more of that coming. I mean, technology is becoming part of the everyday life beyond phones. You know, phones are now the hub that'll connect to all these other cool things. And I think that's going to take off and become huge. But we're going to go through this phase of there's going to be a few duds for every really good piece of technology that becomes a must-have in your life. Something like Google goggles there, Google glasses. Yeah, I mean, maybe that takes off. Maybe it's just too out there when it hits the market that, you know, I mean, even think about things like Bluetooth headsets. You don't see nearly the number of people using them anymore.
Or
Things
3D,
like
I was going to say the 3D phase that we went through 2
the
years
Halo
ago.
helmets.
Sure. Oh, or think of this even. Wearing your Blackberry or phone on your hip on a holster. From a utility perspective,
It's awesome.
That's the best thing you can do, right? To this day, like if you're about efficiency, productivity, keeping your phone, freaking wear it on a holster.
Also, your belt above your belly button. It goes with it.
It's the best, but it fell out of fashion, just like wearing a Bluetooth headset. And now something like the Google Glasses is going to bring it back. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think the world's kind of said, you know, there's
bell bottoms, they had their shot and they were chosen for extinction.
Yeah, but then something like the Nike Fuel Band, you know, that's what I bought for a Christmas present for my fiance and her sister and my future brother-in-law, I guess. And so we're like a little gang of Fuel Band wearers over the holidays. And it's kind of fun. And, you know, they've been wearing it. Erica wore it. I mean, she wears a nice watch. She's got an engagement ring and everything else.
Phil had Android in half his phones.
It doesn't even look like tech on her, right? It actually just fits into her wrists.
Yeah, so, I agree. Actually, the Fuel Band is pretty awesome. I have that too. I wish I had Windows Phone support, but
Phil had Android on half his cameras last year.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. This idea of like technology becoming pervasive is pretty interesting. I just, bought a new car and I went from a 97 to a 2013 and it's like,
does it have sync?
Amazing.
Bought the new car, Dan. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But it has a camera on the side mirror now. So when I switch lanes, the camera comes on the screen. I mean, it totally blows. And it has like 5 cameras in it. It's ridiculous,
Which car did you buy?
2013 Accord.
Does it have sync, Dan? Does it have Microsoft Sync in it?
No, that's Ford, but it does have like the Bluetooth kind of stuff in it, which I also admit.
Honda is getting. I got to find it because we did a story on it this year. Because Honda is adding. I think it might be in your car.
Okay.
I got to look it up.
What?
Honda.
Kevin, are we going to see a battle with BlackBerry cars versus Microsoft cars versus Android cars soon?
Honda Link with the 2013 Accord.
Okay.
Honestly, I think you're going to see. So QNX is in a lot of cars today, and you're either going to see that. And QNX built that platform so it supports Android and it supports iOS and it'll support BlackBerry 10, right? So like QNX Car 2 platform supports all these other platforms that can sit on top of it.
QNX isn't waiting for BlackBerry market share before adding support. It's amazing.
No, I mean, they're smart, right? They have to support everything and they can't shoot themselves in the foot. But I mean, QNX integration to the cars is not just at the infotainment level. I mean, it's running the chips in the engine. Like I talked to Dan Dodge, the founder of QNX one time, and he kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, the car industry is really different, right? They plan 4 years in advance. So I mean, if it's 2013 right now, somebody at the company is thinking about what they're speccing into 2017 models. That's traditional. It's compressing a little bit. They have to move a bit faster. And what's funny is, QNX, one installation could run the whole car. But the way those car companies work, they don't. So they might sell 4 or 5 licenses in one automobile because there's one for the engine, one for this system, and it's embedded operating systems all over the place. So I think you'll see QNX continue to do well at that level. But if anybody's moving to other platforms, it's probably Android, where you start to see it become the all-encompassing automation integration platform. So we'll see how the next few years roll.
We even joked that they're going to be running all the adult novelty toys soon, Phil.
That sounds like a new site.
Android Central after dark.
I'm just saying some things are under embargo and some aren't, and time's right.
All right, guys. So last question before we wrap up. Kev, June or July 2013, where is BlackBerry? Sorry.
June or July? Why did you pick 6-month check-in, I guess?
Yeah.
I think you can see it pretty well. I think BlackBerry's still in business. I think they're actually selling quite a few phones. I think mindshare is mainly restored, that BlackBerry can build a proper modern smartphone with a good touchscreen experience. I think you're still going to see a little bit of an app gap because there's always going to be an app gap, right? You're always going to see iOS, maybe Android get stuff first, but hopefully you see the gap compression tighten up a lot because it's so easy to bring apps over to BB10, and I think RIM knows they have to be aggressive on that front. But I think they're in the game. As for, do we say is there a clear third or fourth place? I think 2013 it'll still be going in all directions, but I think RIM will be very clearly positioned because it's a simpler message to communicate than Windows Phone. You have one manufacturer, you have one operating system, all the marketing dollars is going at pushing the one brand and the couple of phones globally, just like say how Apple sells the iPhone or Android's been or Samsung's been so successful with the Galaxy S3. You're going to see RIM emerge as this is the big phone for us this year, and I think it's compelling in a lot of ways with enough people. And I think the people who don't buy it will understand why it's maybe not for them, and that's what RIM needs, is to change. Not just cell phones, but to get people to understand that BlackBerry is back, even if it's not.
Will it be a hit with the tech media? Will we be seeing all the bloggers running around with BlackBerry phones come summer?
No, I don't think that the tech community is going to switch up. I mean, unless they get corporate issued ones. But I think there will be parts of it that are pretty compelling, especially if you're a heavy communicator. That's always been BlackBerry's strength, and I think it doesn't go away with BB10. So if you're looking for one device that puts a priority on communication and is still good at everything else, the killing time side of life, the app side of life, I think RIM will be pretty compelling for a lot of people. Tech community, though, I think you need to be on the forefront of all the apps and connected things, which that's the tough thing for a company like RIM or Microsoft right now to get to be first. And I mean, even Android is getting beat out by iOS on that. Although I think I'm
going to go on record.
Both.
I'm going to go on record and say that all the editors of Crackberry are going to be firmly on BB10 by midsummer.
Well, I think having BBM for us would be great.
Phil, come summer or come Google I/O, where do you see the platform in the major companies?
I'm not expecting another big version change before then. We're gonna see more new cool stuff from HTC in a couple months. And I'm excited for that. I think they still make really, really good hardware. I've got the Windows Phone, the 8X here, and I love that hardware. We're not going to get quite the same shape with Android, but that's obviously the direction they're going. I think I'm really curious to see what happens in the living room with Google, because that's their next big play, and coincidentally is why they renamed the Android market Google Play. That's their long game, right? And it's easy for us to forget that they don't have to solve this problem in 4 months or 6 months or one cycle or two cycles or as long as they're playing that chess game and not just a quick whatever, then it's going to be a big deal. Are things going to fundamentally shift? I don't know. I want to see some better cross-platform communication. I think that would be a big thing. I want to see just little things cleaned up. I want to see apps cleaned up and just better. I think we could still use better apps. If you go back to the iPad Mini launch, or was that iOS 6?
iOS 6 was the iPhone 5.
Yeah. When it was I forget who did it, but they pointed out these not crappy, but Android apps that don't look that good.
Yeah, Tim Cook.
You know what? You can find those on any platform, by the way. Yes. they're more than their share of iOS apps that could use a redesign as well. But I'd like to see Google. I don't know how easy it is, and again, you only have so many people available to do all this grand stuff that we think up. But better sort of developer relations that helps these companies and these apps just get better, because in the end of the day it's all about the apps.
Will there be a Facebook phone or an Amazon phone this year?
Amazon maybe. Facebook, I'm still not buying that. But again, I don't know that I don't know what Amazon gets out of it making a phone. Right? A tablet I get. It's a different sort of appliance.
It's a front end for their store.
Yeah, but a phone that's sitting in your pocket all day, unless they're making money off your text messages and picture uploads, I'm just not sure why that's going to be a thing for them. So.
You don't think there'll be a Facebook phone now that there's a poke app and you can have your sexting right on the home screen of every new device?
God, wife and I were watching one of the morning shows go on about that stuff this morning, and maybe that needs to be our new mission. Is part of what we do is just educating people not to be stupid.
We need to hire so many full-time guys.
What is it? What do they call it? It's Snapchat. Is that what it is?
Yes, there was Poke and Snapchat. Yeah.
Snapchat. It's like Snapchat doesn't work. Your pictures are still there. Don't take pictures of yourself.
Of your junk. That's what you mean.
That's what I told my wife. I was like, you know what? Here's how to delete pictures of your ball sack. Don't take it in the first place.
You told your wife that?
Yes.
Hey, we're progressive around here. It's all right.
The show is over.
No, on that
We're not in Vegas yet, Phil. We're not in Vegas yet.
Dan, come this summer, where is Windows Phone and Nokia and Microsoft and HTC and all them?
Well, I don't think Nokia is going to exit the hardware business like that crappy story yesterday. Nokia is still going to be around. They're going to do well. Their stock, I didn't check it today, but their stock is doing very well. Investors have confidence in the company again, which is, pretty big. Windows Phone is going to be slow but steady growth. Actually, I think it's going to have a nice uptick. I've been real curious. Third week January, Nokia will reveal their numbers. Hopefully, they won't be too vague, but we should get a sense at least how well the Lumia 920 is doing. There's always this constant debate about whether or not it's selling really well, which is why they're low stock, or there's just low stock and it's creating this perception of demand. I actually think it's a little bit of both, but I'm really curious to see how those numbers pan out. I think Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 will be a dual story for the year. Both are going to need updates and tweaks to make them better. The Surface, I don't actually use it as much now that I have the Acer S7, but every time they kind of roll out an update, the performance greatly increases with it. So you can see that they're greatly refining how things work. You're going to see that continue to evolve, and I think it's a necessary thing because they're both a little bit rough still. We'll see more over-the-air updates for Windows Phone 8 to bring some of that missing functionality. The app gap discussion is going to slowly wane, and already has, because now Windows Phone basically has pretty much all the major apps. Pandora coming out hopefully soon. That was announced, and everybody who gets it on Windows Phone gets a free year premium service for it.
But what about Songza, Dan? Songza.
Yeah, I still don't know what that really is. You keep going on about it, but I need to look it up. So,
Dan doesn't know these apps. Kevin, stop ruining his world.
Whatever the biggest fad is this week, it's like,
Instagram, what is that? I never heard of it.
But, you're going to start to see, I think, Windows Phone software coming out around the same time as Android and iOS. I think it's
will there be a Halo game, Dan?
Yeah, maybe a Halo game. I don't know about that. That is a big. I will admit, I think Windows Phone and Microsoft needs to do a better job with the Xbox integration in general. But this goes into that whole legacy of Microsoft with the silos and how departments operate. I think the Xbox division still sort of wants to protect their thing versus Windows Phone. But that needs to come closer together. It is already. You see Windows 8 has Xbox games on it. And they're pretty cool generally.
All you have to do is make sure when Halo 5 launches, if you own a Windows Phone, it detects it and makes you unkillable.
Yeah, something like that would be definitely nice. But you will see that. And speaking of Xbox, of course, we're expecting E3 this year. Microsoft to at least give preliminary information on the Xbox 720 or whatever it's going to be called. It won't be released then. I don't think it'll be out till holiday season, which would make much more sense. But I think we'll get a preliminary look at it. And that's going to be a big story because the 720 is expected to do what Windows Phone and Windows 8 have done, which is converge on the same kernel and OS basically. So the idea is the 720 is going to be running an NT kernel, and it's going to be very similar to the Windows 8, Windows Phone 8, and you're going to see that convergence happen. So I'd be real interested to see how that story pans out because then you're going to really see that vision of Microsoft start to come together where everything sort of overlaps. So you're going to see a refinement of our message throughout the year. I think Windows Phone is finally breaking through the public barrier of, this is a viable option for a phone. I've just seen a lot more awareness from people who previously didn't know anything about it to, oh yeah, that's the new Lumia device.
Because of Windows Phone Central.
Because of Windows Phone Central, right? So I think it's going to be a good year. I'm curious to see how RIM does. Obviously, I'm both excited and worried about RIM because I think Kev's right. You know, RIM and BlackBerry is a name, and they have a legacy. And although Microsoft has thrown a lot of money and has done, in my opinion, a lot of things right for Windows Phone, it's still been very difficult to catch up to Android and iOS, which goes to show you how strong those systems are. And so I'm real curious to see how RIM plays in this.
Also, BlackBerry has Kevin, which is like a blogger of mass destruction. You can never count him
That's
out.
true. That's true.
All
So
I
it's
can say is get Crackberry in the next 30 days. We're taking it to levels.
Oh, hold on a second. I want to give you the last word. I want to do a really quick Apple segment, and then I'm going to give you the show. So I think Apple going into the summer will have WWDC. We'll have iOS 7. I think Apple arguably wasted a year in 2012 trying to get Google off their platform, outsourcing their social to Facebook and Twitter, and doing a lot of things that will help Apple going forward, but didn't necessarily charm the pants off of users in that year. They're going to have to fix Maps. They're going to have to fix their services. It's much easier for Microsoft and even RIM and certainly Google to buy developers, to buy designers, to buy apps, and make good-looking stuff native on the phone than it is for Apple to get really good, Google or Facebook or Amazon quality services, and they really need those, especially considering, Letterpress took down Game Center, and that really shouldn't happen. Hopefully, Apple's going to keep going with the hardware. Like Phil, it's hard to see. I mean, there's a Retina display for the iPad Mini. There's making the iPad Maxi thin again. There's certain obvious hardware steps, but we're getting to the point where what more can you throw at these devices? You have beyond 1080p screens on the iPads already. There's better audio you can do, but there's going to have to be a leap to whatever is next, and whether that's Apple Television Box, an iWatch. It's hard to tell, but it's a hit-driven business for Apple, so it's going to have to be whatever is next, and we're going to cover all of it. But Kevin, I want to hear final word. What's new for Crackberry this year, and what's new for Mobile Nations?
So we have so much going on right now. I mean, partially we left things a little late on getting our site redesign going on, but behind the scenes, Crackberry this year is kicking it up a big notch. Our last site update was really 2010 because then we put the focus on all the other sites. But behind the scenes right now, as I talk, our tech team, our design team, we're going full bore on the final stages of the Crackberry redesign. So we'll have a new site coming this month. We have a kick-ass BlackBerry 10 app for Crackberry coming out. On the content level, we're going to be doing some things this month that we've just never done. So I'll keep it kind of secret for now, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm getting basically ready to not sleep at all for the next month, and along with most of our writers. So lots happening there. I think the timing is this shit's just gonna get crazy. And what's good here is this is the launch we've been waiting for literally 5 years. I mean, when Steve Jobs got on stage and first announced the iPhone, at that point it should have been RIM coming out with a brand new platform for their phones. It took them 5 years, but this is now the phone that is really okay. Here's our response to everything that's going on. It's a BlackBerry that keeps the best of the old, brings in the best of everything else that's been happening. I think it's something I can get behind big time. And we're going to leave nothing on the table when it comes to this launch, because either, RIM gets this right, or if they don't, it's probably game over. And I say that very openly and honestly. So we're going to be doing...
Serious question, and I only asked this halfway like an asshole. I mean, what are the odds that we're going to come away from whatever, from RIM's announcement and be like, really? Really?
It depends what how you're looking at it. I mean, the thing is, a lot is already known about BlackBerry 10, right? Like, if you say to me, are you going to be surprised come 2013? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, we've already leaked the heck out of a lot of stuff.
Spoiler warning.
We know what the touchscreen and keyboards look like. It's been leaked. We know what the platform generally looks like. We have BlackBerry 10 running on the dev alphas in a basic format, right? Like, we know the UI. We've used it. I love it. I think for some people, I think especially in Android, what's bad about BlackBerry 10, and this is the challenge that I want to see from RIM, is The best part of BlackBerry 10 is the experience. It's actually, as you start to use the device, you realize how freaking fast it is, right? The way it multitasks, the way you flow to the home screen and in and out, it is a fast experience. And I'm using Windows Phone 8, iPhone 5, 4.2 Jelly Bean here, and nothing is as quick to get stuff done because of the speed at which everything works. But when you look at screen caps of it, it's easy to say, those icons look kind of dated. The active frames look kind of chunky. And that's sort of a hesitation I have is when you look at it, it doesn't necessarily look cutting edge.
How approachable is the gestures? Like, how discoverable was it for you to use?
I would say this is the other part of RIM's marketing strategy. The most important thing they can do right now is teach people the gestures before they go into a store and pick one up for the first time. And it's something they didn't do well enough on the playbook, although that wasn't sold through carriers. It was sold more so through retail stores where nobody was really doing a good job of that. I think it's really important that RIM gets it across. Because if you don't know the gestures, you're going to pick it up and be like, I don't know.
How do I use this
challenge?
Actually, and Kevin just mentioned something that I think I totally forgot and that Google has to fix. If you're going to have your own phone and tablet line, you have to be able to sell the damn thing.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, Google just sucks at that. And they've had a couple chances in 2012 and blew it both times with the Nexus 7 and then later with the 4 and the 10. And they have to fix that. I would presume that's a relatively easy thing to fix.
Just use web objects like Apple's been doing for 30 years.
It's it's just a matter of doing it, and it just looks stupid. This is Google. This is the company that controls how much of our lives at this point.
All of them
on all platforms, right?
Google changed my birthday this year, Phil.
You can't sell me a phone.
Well, it's because
Really?
Google's only good at information. When it comes to physical objects, they're like
Right.
They're looking at it like someone from the field, like, well, I don't know what this is.
This coffee mug exists. How do I?
Right.
How do I pour coffee in it?
That's why Dan's waiting for his Surface phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, Kev, Mobile Nations 2013. Last word. Where are we going to be?
Mobile Nations 2013. We closed off the year really on a high note. The last 6 months we've seen nothing but growth. Partially down to our relentless way we run our sites. We're just all out all the time. We only have one speed. It's full speed
What was
ahead.
the reader count at the end of the year? Do you remember?
I think we crossed the 12 million reader mark.
Woohoo!
And my real goal was 10 million readers and 50 million page views by the end of 2012. And I just wanted to hit it once, and we hit it, and we've continued to grow there. This year for us was very much a technical year where we spent a lot of our time and effort and resources on the back end of the sites, putting our sites onto sort of a similar platform because, the way we've grown over the years, that wasn't the case. We had each site was literally a different content management system. Very hard for us to roll out new features in that. So it's really been on us.
We didn't even talk to each other for a while.
Yeah, we didn't used to talk to each other. It's been we've had a huge shift in how we run this, the organization over the last year and a half. And I think now you're starting to see everything come together really well. And this is the year where we start to put the pedal, the foot down on the accelerator pedal, because you have to get all these things lined up before you do that, or else you're driving 5 cars instead of one big car. And I think things like implementing Passport or unified login solution across the sites is really huge for us. Really, really huge. That was such a
It is
major
the best
challenge.
login system I have ever used, and I'm not saying that as someone who was involved in it. It is stunning the work that team did.
No, it's amazing. It was a fun project to be part of too, to see how that all came together. And it's something we've said for a few years we had to do, and we put it off for a long time because it's a massive undertaking. Unifying 5 million accounts.
So if you have a CrackBerry account, you can with one button use iMore, use Android Central, use Windows Phone Central. If you have a Twitter account, a Facebook account, a Microsoft account, it's amazing.
It's fully supported, and I think the beautiful thing there too is, if we want to do something new in 2013, which I'd love us to have another site in the network, our entire member base can join in a click, right? You just go and you're there, and it's not another site; it's part of the same thing. So I think you're going to see us up the game there. A couple big
Tizen
things
Central. We're gonna have a Tizen.
Yeah, Ubuntu Central, Tizen Central, lots we can do. And I think the big thing
Firefox,
too,
right? Firefox got a stupid OS coming out too, right? That's obviously going to take the world by storm.
Don't listen to him, Lisa. Mozilla OS is awesome.
I've used it. It's kind of. I mean, I used it an early one a couple months ago, and it's another one of those that. I mean, look, those ROSs are not for you and me, right? They're developing nations.
Think Jerry.
Jerry, neckbeards. No, and they're fun for us to play with, but they're not for us to actually use.
There's Ubuntu phone, Phil.
I know. I can't wait to try it.
So it's going to be a big year. Mobile app experience going to be great across the board. There's areas where we've been slacking. We're filling in the gaps quickly, never as quick as I want to, but quickly. And I think what's really exciting to me is we've kind of achieved something that was the goal, right? A few years ago, we had, a site like Crackberry was making up like 80% of our traffic plus across all of our platform sites. And now we're in a position where every site is really the biggest and best for its platform. And I'm so incredibly proud to work with everybody on this stuff. So I think you're going to continue to see us kick some butt and have a lot of fun. And I think that's the Mobile Nation's mantra is, we have fun. The minute becomes work is the minute we're in trouble. And I think we have more fun every day as it goes by. So 2013, the world didn't end. I was kind of banking on that.
You were hoping to avoid marriage.
I was hoping to avoid marriage, but now it's, I don't know when the world ends now. It's like a long time from now. So we're just going to keep hustling.
So Kevin, where can people find you and where can they find Crackberry?
Well, just log it to crackberry.com homepage for the next month and hit refresh often because shit's gonna get crazy. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at crackberrykevin. But lately, I just use that to tear apart journalists who write stupid stories, which is actually a lot of fun.
You did that beautifully, by the way.
Honestly, one of my New Year's resolutions for Crackberry, and it's going to be in my From the Editor's Desk this week, is on Sunday. Is just that, there's obviously you need to maintain tact in anything you do, but I'm really at a point now in my life where I'm not shy and I'm gonna voice my opinion. And when I see stupidity on the internet, I'm gonna call it out. And I'm really starting to think tech journalists should have to pass a test or get a license.
A Turing test?
Because like Dan yesterday, like what's with these? Honestly, I don't like to criticize people publicly. It's in my staff policy thing. Like, hey, have tact. But these Forbes Online contributors are just like, I'm sure there's some good ones, but I just keep stumbling across the ones who I'm like, where are you finding these people? Because they don't know what they're talking about. Shouldn't be allowed on the internet. But
welcome to my world, gentlemen. Welcome to my world.
Really getting mad at the idiots out there. So I think you'll see Mobile Nations be a beacon of truth going forward. And I think people already start, looking at us as that. But I think we haven't been so vocal in telling people we're the beacon of truth out there. So I think you're going to see.
We are Superman.
I don't know. It's embarrassing to read some of that stuff, and
Phil,
you'll never see that crap on our sites.
Phil, where can we find you? Where can we find Android Central?
Well, you're not going to find me trying to write anything about Blackberry, that's for sure. Android Central, Google Plus, Twitter, just we're there.
Just
I
type
don't need
Phil
to tell you
Nicholson
the
in
address.
and you'll find him.
Yeah.
Google
Look into
him.
the sky, and you'll see
Talking
me.
about dicks.
What?
Don't bing that.
Oh, he feels like dicks. Right. Whatever you want to talk about, hey, that's cool.
I have too many show titles. Dan, where can we find you? Where can we find Windows Phone Central?
You can find us at WP Central, although we're called Windows Phone Central, so people understand what the WP is. You can find me at Daniel_Rubino on Twitter, which I've actually been quiet lately. I got kind of tired of Twitter and just other people. But sometimes I say funny things on there or stupid things and controversial stuff. And yeah, we have an exciting year ahead of us, so come by. As Kevin says, our site is very happy looking with all our colors. So
you are going to have the most magenta business card at CES. People from T-Mobile are going to say, damn, that's a magenta business card.
That's right. We're going to hire Carly. Is that her name from T-Mobile? She'll be our spokesperson.
Nice. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find everything about iPhones, iPads, and Apple at iMore. And you can find all of us at mobilenations.com/shows. Guys, Happy New Year, and thank you for making 2013 already awesome.
Woo! CES, baby.
Nice.
Next week. Gonna be fun.
Woo!
Bye.
Kevin out?
Bye.
Oh, yeah. Kevin. No, should we do a new exit?
Mobile Nations out.
2013?
Drop the mic.
Yeah.
Slam the mic. Slam the
Mobile
phone.
Nations out. I don't know. Just end it. I'll think on it. Mobile Nations out. Kevin out. Something's out.
We're all out of our minds. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will
right.
see you. We're going to do some podcasts at CES, so we'll see you there.
Yeah, are we gonna do video or audio only? I guess
Whatever
it's
we
hard
can
to
do.
Okay.
We'll be there.
Sweet. Awesome.